I would describe myself as an educator, uh, an activist, a feminist, an abolition feminist, someone who's been involved in movements for social justice for the majority of my life. For people who don't know who I am, I often point out that I was once on the FBI's 10 most wanted lists and ended up spending time in jails in New York, in Marin County, and in San Jose. After which I became active in movements for prisoners' rights, prison abolition movements, and I continue to be active to this day. I should also say, though, that I have taught at various universities. I was fired from my first job at UCLA. I've also taught at Stanford. I've taught at Mills College in Oakland. I've spent the majority of my academic career at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I have been interested in the role of women in social justice movements. I published a book some decades ago entitled Women, Race, and Class that looks very specifically at Black women's contributions to the movement for Black liberation. At that particular time, I don't think I would have referred to myself as a feminist because my first encounter with the term feminism linked it in a way with the concerns of middle-class white women. And we used to talk about white bourgeois feminism. And I saw myself as a revolutionary and therefore as linked more with women of color, with working class white women. But over the last period, the women of color, radical women of color, working class women more broadly, have redefined feminism. And I think that today, if one asks, especially on a university campus, what is the term you most associate with feminism? The answer would be intersectionality. That is to say, thinking not only about gender, but also about class, and also about race, and also about ability, and also about the environment, and also about prisons. And so that is why I have no problem today identifying into feminism. I've always, or as long as I can remember, I've been interested in the relationship between art and politics. I I know that that movements are often driven by music, by poetry, by visual art. I think that art is able to reach people in a way that didactic conversations often are not able. So that aesthetics and politics. When I was a graduate student, I studied the relationship between aesthetics and politics. I've always been concerned about the fact that in movements, often the artistic dimension is seen as entertainment, and therefore as an aside. So you organize a rally and you ask, well, who's going to provide the entertainment for the rally? Not taking into consideration the epistemological dimension of art, the ways in which art can produce knowledge, often knowledge of the sort that does not occur with a simple political speech. Of course, art involves the imagination. And if we believe that revolutions are possible, then we have to be able to imagine different modes of being, different ways of existing in society, different social relations. I think that art is actually crucial. Artists are at the forefront of social change. Artists often allow us to grasp what we cannot yet understand. It seems that in the last period, over the last decades, the separation of art and politics, which was assumed for so long, art for art's sake, art that has anything to do with politics is inferior art. We've heard these ideas expressed over and over again. But over the last period, artists have been more expressly, more overtly political, and have begun to, I think, give us a sense of the ways in which art enriches our ideas about change, about revolution. My relationship to the past, which includes my relationship to my own past, is a complicated one, I think. I have always been interested in history, and I am convinced that we know that someone said the past is never past, right? The past has shaped us. The past is always present. We are always inhabiting the vestiges and the sediments of the past. As a matter of fact, when we began to do work around the prison industrial complex, we talked about the role that slavery had played in shaping the forms of punishment that still exist today. So I think that on a macro level, it's very clear that our past informs where we are, who we are, what we can aspire to in the present. And I think about myself as an individual, having been shaped by the fact that I grew up in the most segregated city in the US. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, at a time when Black people there were considered absolutely inferior, were barred from almost all of the cultural institutions. I still have very vivid memories of wanting to go into the museum in Birmingham, but I did not visit that museum until many, many years later. I have memories of my elementary school, which was located not far from a white elementary school. And I remember looking at that school and being aware of the fact that we got the books that had been used by the white kids and that had been written in by them and torn up by them. We always got secondhand books from the white school system. Um, it's very important for me to retain those memories. You know, first of all, because we need to know the past, we need to know where we came from, but perhaps most importantly, uh, because we need to be able to um, acknowledge our victories. Uh, we need to be able to point to ways in which change has happened, largely due to the fact that people have come together and protested and demonstrated and demanded change. There are those who often say, nothing has changed. And of course, sometimes when we look at the current political predicament and the degree to which racist statements and actions proliferate, we might say nothing has really changed in this country. But I think that what we are witnessing during this period is a reaction to the change that has happened. And that our struggle is not so much to say that, you know, nothing has really changed, but our struggle is to preserve those victories and to move forward and to use them as a way of moving forward. So I think the past is always relevant. The past helps us define what we want in the future. I think that even those struggles that did not conclude in a successful manner, that were not victorious, help us to develop agendas for the future. And so I think that the past and the future are very much on a continuum that define who we are in the present. Well, you know, I once found it very difficult to develop a relationship to those politics of representation, I would say, because I knew that the images of me, while they had something to do with me and who I was and what I had done, that I could never, as an individual, live up to the expectations that were forged in those images. And so it took me a while to come to the conclusion that while those images are definitely of me, a younger me, they don't necessarily represent me as an individual. They represent more the movement that was generated around the demand for my freedom. And I've come, there was a time when I felt embarrassed in front of them. I really didn't, know how to be in the presence of those images. Now I'm pretty comfortable because I recognize that they represent the demands and aspirations of millions of people. The campaign around the demand for my freedom was absolutely amazing. At the time, I was charged with 3 capital crimes. And even people who knew that I wasn't guilty did not understand how it was ever going to be possible for me to extricate myself from that situation, because all of the existing powers, the president of the U.S., the governor of California, the head of the FBI, they were all arrayed against me. And so the fact that it was possible to generate a movement in all over this country, all over the world, and I think all of the organizations that were involved, the Communist Party, I was a member of the Communist Party, and in every country where there was a Communist Party, there was also a campaign to free Angela Davis. And so I see those images as symbolic of harnessing the power of masses of people and achieving what was considered to be impossible. Well, in answer to the question regarding our relationship to the future, how can we contribute to a world that is going to exist, 5, 6, 7 generations from now? I think that we might also consider the past. And we might also ask ourselves, who is responsible for where we are today? How is it that we are the representatives of what the incarnations, the manifestations of what people fought for decades and centuries ago. Therefore, we have a relationship to those who fought against slavery, to those who fought against the genocidal colonization that in many ways continues to affect indigenous people today. And I think it's our job to do the work today that is not so much going to achieve the final goals that we might be imagining, but that will keep those goals alive, and that will be able to pass them down from one generation to the next. Oftentimes, when people ask me why Black history in particular is important, I say that in many ways, people of African descent in this hemisphere, in the Americas, are an inspiration to people fighting for freedom all over the world. Because it's kind of amazing that for 400, 500 years, the struggle is still going on, and it has been passed down from one generation to the next. Of course, sometimes there are lulls, there are ebbs, but at other times it erupts, as it has erupted in Brazil, for example, as it erupted with Black Lives Matter a few years ago in this country, and it seems to me that that it is so important to imagine a future that we will never be able to actually witness, but we will be a part of it if we do the work that keeps these goals, these aspirations alive. And some cultures cultivate this protracted sense of the self. Indigenous cultures have a very different temporality. Capitalist culture, on the other hand, marks the lifetime, marks what we might say a victory in terms of the lifetime of a single individual and the inheriting of money, of capital. And I think that we should all be inspired by the fact that it's possible for us to do work today that people will be grateful for 100 years from now or 200 years from now. And certainly the climate movement, the environmental movement, the young people's call for an end to climate change represents their awareness of the fact that they will have no future if global warming continues to happen. They will have no future if they're not able to put a stop to the exploitation of the environment. And I think that we have a great deal to learn from their ability to imagine themselves as adults, and then and to imagine their children and their children's children and their children's children's children. Yes, there are successes that that help me along the way. I think my own resiliency and resiliency of those who are my age group, my comrades, my friends, has emanated from an awareness that that freedom is a constant struggle. That if we are serious about being advocates of freedom, we have to be willing to struggle. As Toni Morrison said, freedom consists in fighting for the freedom of others. So it makes no sense to feel, or one cannot feel free alone. I know some people think they do, but freedom substantively involves expanding the possibilities for ever larger numbers of people. And I'm very happy that I've participated in movements that have done that. And I'm happy to be a witness, to bear witness for those who are not here. So I know I've lived for 3/4 of a century, and many people have not been able to make it this far. And so I see myself as standing in for them, as bearing witness for them regarding the work that we did to enable possibilities for others. And I get very excited when I see young people who so effortlessly engage in the kind of discourse that took us so long to figure out. I mean, in a sense, the metaphor of one generation standing on the shoulders of the other generation, I think really works because they are stronger, they're taller, they can see further. And I'm not like one of those older people who says to young people, you're doing it wrong. This is the way you should be doing it. I'm happy to see young people experimenting. I'm even happy to see them make mistakes because we learn from mistakes. And I would say that my resiliency has come from a continued interaction with younger generations and the recognition that that they are the ones who are the leaders now, and that it's my role to learn from them. You know, I think that I feel most free when I am in the presence of great art with others. When I'm at a concert hearing amazing music and aware of the fact that I'm in community with others who are having pretty much the same feeling. Uh, and I think art teaches us how to feel free even as we are compelled to live under conditions of unfreedom. What excites me is the fact that change always happens, and that I mean, I'm thinking about the fact that say 10 or 15 years ago, when you mention transgender communities, trans communities, there was like hardly any response at all, and people were so burdened with this binary notion of gender and the impact of ideology that it was very difficult to have a serious conversation about trans people and their rights. And then within a relatively short period of time, um, we've um, we've changed enormously, and we recognize how important it is to think critically about what it is we imagine as normal. And so that means that we have to think about everything we consider to be normal, because it's in that sense of the normal that we discover the greatest challenges to change. And I would like to consider myself as someone who continues to be critical of what is considered the norm, what is considered normal, even with respect to myself. And I know that I have a great deal more to change, to recognize in order to change. And I hope that I have a massive community of people who are joining me.